What's going on, everybody? Bearden for Hope here. Welcome back to yet another video. Today we're going to be talking about Peter McKinnon's beginner photography mistakes and what to avoid to take better photos. And this was probably the most cringy YouTube intro I think I've ever done. If you're new here and you haven't already taken the time to bless that subscribe button and the notification bell that is right next to it so you do not miss a video, please do me a favor and take a second to do that. I do also stream on Twitch every Friday evening from 7 to 10 Central Time. If you're interested in that, the link is in the video description below. So many of you may know that I have actually started a photography journey, and I have been kind of really considering myself an amateur. I've only been shooting photos now for about 2 months pretty seriously. So now I have taken the time to really begin to hone that craft in and bring it in to where hopefully I'm learning something, and I'm learning more and more that there's always something new to learn. Peter McKinnon, as I mentioned in my video as to why I started photography, if you missed that, by the way, I'll put a link in the YouTube card above. I mentioned Peter McKinnon as well as a few others as being inspirations for me starting. Peter is definitely an inspiration, I know, not just to me, but to many other people as well. And I figured who better to start out with and learn from than this guy. And yeah, let's just get started. Let's just move into the reaction. I'm ready to rock.
What's up, everybody? Peter McKinnon here, and welcome back to another video. Today we're talking photography. If you like...
Okay, I feel like I nailed that YouTube intro. Let me know in the comments if I actually nailed it. Okay, I'm not Peter McKinnon, but like I did okay. Give me some credit.
Taking pictures, if you own a camera, you wander about snapping pics, this video is for you. Specifically targeted more towards beginners or people that aren't necessarily professional, but I wanted to go through a few things that beginners make mistakes on quite frequently when they're starting out in this craft. I've looked inside myself and I've found some things that I wish I had done better when I was starting photography out. A few little things that if I had just paid...
He's making this sound so deep. He's really good at that. He's the dude's literally talking about beginner photography mistakes, and my guy is making it sound like he's about to preach a sermon. Quite frankly, I love to see it.
Paid more attention to, I would have been taking better photos faster, which means potentially more business if that's something that you're looking to take photography towards, or just you're being a better artist, you're being a better photographer with some of these things if you keep them in mind. Tip number one of the things I wish I paid more attention to is the histogram. That's this little funky chart right here that looks like a heart rate monitor. But
Okay, I can tell you I'm already making one mistake. I'm already 0 for 1, bro. I was hoping I would at least have... All right, let's find out what the histogram is. If you know what it is, and I'm sorry. I'm amateur. I'm not sorry. I'm learning.
Far left of that chart represents the blacks and the shadows. Far right of that graph chart represents the highlights, the whites, anything that's overexposed. And in the middle is your midtones. So you never want to see that graph, if you will, the histogram, spiked in one direction. If it's way up here, that means it's blown out and your image is damaged and there's just no detail. There's too much white, there's too much brightness, there's too much light. Whereas on the...
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That was too much whiteness. That was too much light. That was way too bright. I don't think I have corneas anymore.
The opposite spectrum of that, if it's spiking on this side, there's no detail because you've crushed those blacks too much. It's just too dark. There's too much shadow. It's not evenly balanced. So when you look at a histogram, it tells you right away without even having to look at the photo, because don't trust your eyes and don't trust the back of an LCD screen.
Facts.
Too many times I would just look at the photo on my camera and be like, yeah, it looks dope. Then I would get back to start editing it. You see it on a huge monitor. It looks totally different. I would see the histogram within Lightroom or Photoshop, wherever I was editing, and then realize, oh wow, that's actually wildly overexposed. Had I just taken 5 seconds to look at the histogram, I would have known that scientifically, and then I could have just taken another photo and fixed that. Because what you're looking for is an even plane. You want that histogram to have a nice, even flow, no crazy spikes, like when you're tracking your sleep with a sleep tracker app and you wake up and it looks like Everest. Wow, that was...
Okay, I really hope that your sleep does not look like Everest. That would be kind of a tough scene. But okay, this is actually really important for me because I am terrible at figuring out exposure. Exposure is something that I struggle with, like dialing in on, and I'm super, super pumped. I'll have to mess with that with my next photo shoot. I'll let you guys know how it goes. If you haven't followed me on Instagram, by the way, I've started to post my own photos on there. I mean, I'm starting out. They aren't perfect, but some of them have actually been pretty solid. I'll throw my favorite one I recently took of a Toyota pickup. Had some rust, some pallets in the back. I love that. I actually edited that on my cell phone with, I think, just the Lightroom, the basic Lightroom app. It was pretty decent, I thought. I felt like for one of my first photos, I was pretty proud of it. But yeah, I think that the histogram is going to be something I'm going to have to pay more attention to. I mean, it's important. I just didn't realize how important it was to exposure.
It's a rough night, but then you wake up one morning and you see it's like calm waters. You're just chilling in the Maldives. It's just like, it's just smooth. You're coasting and you're like, wow, I feel great. That's the same kind of thing you want when you're looking at a histogram. I have weird analogies, but I think you guys dig them because they help me. Tip number one, to help you being a better photographer, look at that histogram. Don't trust your eyes in the back of the LCD.
I do love his analogies. Not moving?
Point number two is settling for a photo when you could have made it so much better by either moving yourself to a better vantage point or moving something in that frame out of the way, right? So as an example, you're taking a photo shoot, someone's standing there, you snap a photo. You could have just moved that chair like 2 inches to the left. It would no longer be in frame and it would make that photo way better because the focus is now on the subject. Or maybe it's just moving your subject a little bit to the left so that garbage can isn't in frame anymore. You don't have to worry about photoshopping it. Or maybe it's walking up the hill or down the hill to get a better vantage point, or trying a few extra locations instead of just being okay with the one that you have. So sometimes it's these little tweaks by just moving something out of the way or moving yourself that's gonna make a massive difference with how good your photos look. And you'd be surprised. Go take some shots.
Yeah.
Don't think anything of it.
Okay, I'm gonna pause for a second. I know I've been pausing a lot. This is actually a really big thing for me. I was looking at one of my recent photos of a nighttime shot in downtown Springfield, Missouri. And one of the shots, I'll throw it up on screen here. There was a lot of negative space. And I feel like I could have eliminated that by, as he's talking about, moving myself. I was in a parking garage. And if I had just moved, I believe I was on the second or third floor. If I had just moved to the first floor or a floor down, a lot of that negative space would have went away. I would have been able to retain a bunch of the detail without having to crop out the photo, like that negative space up top. And I feel like the photo overall would have been a whole different ball game. Not to say that this other one wasn't great, but it wasn't great. But it wasn't, horrible either. It wasn't on the other end of the spectrum. I was just, learning things. But this is super important. I agree with that wholeheartedly. And, because I'm obviously an authority on the subject.
Look at them, look inside the frame and think to yourself, what could I have moved out of the way to make this picture more clear, more concise, more focused, more polished, more professional? I guarantee you'll almost always find something. Maybe it's even just your sunglasses that you left on the couch and you're taking a picture of this nice clean room, but you forgot when you walked in, you dropped your keys on the counter. It would look better if those keys were gone. So it's those little things that you need to look for that you can easily remove that are gonna make your photos look better, or move yourself to get a better vantage point. That's number two. Oh, I'm feeling this. Haha.
Okay, listen, before we get into the tripod thing, this is a huge mistake I make all the time. I'm just going to tell a story at this point. I was literally going to shoot some photos of a wonderful friend of mine. Her name's Rachel, and her son. And I was on my way to grab those photos, and it occurred to me it was nighttime, and there's no lighting pretty much anywhere that I was going to take these photos. And I'm like, I'm going to have to do long exposure in order to get this lit up well, especially with my lower end lenses. I need a tripod. So I ended up being able to take two compositions, because we ran out of time, because I had to go get a tripod. No offense, Peter, moving on. I agree. Tripod's huge.
The last mistake that a lot of beginners make, and that I made all the time, being thorough. So many times I would just rip through, grab my camera, shoot what I thought I needed, and be done. I didn't take the time to check all my settings enough because I just thought I knew it. I was arrogant. I just thought, I know this. Like, I nailed it. I got it in camera. I was on them. Like, I do the same thing I do all the time. I'm good. But I've made this mistake so many times. Maybe you shot JPEG instead of RAW. Maybe you shot small JPEG instead of RAW. And a little fun fact, I'm gonna come clean about something. Last year, I went to the ice caves. Took these amazing star trail photos. Something happened midday. I actually shot all of those photos on small JPEG, not even RAW. I was still able to blow them up for my gallery, but inside knowing that like the highest res I have of those
that's
photos
so sad.
is like 1200 pixels wide, that hurts. Especially being that like there's some of my favorite photographs that I've ever taken, because I was rushing through it. I just assumed I'm not gonna make those mistakes, but I'm still making them. So being thorough to check your settings to make sure the smallest thing isn't gonna ruin something incredible is very important. Maybe it's making sure your ISO is not too high, your shutter speed's right on. Checking that EV meter to make sure it's not all the way to the left, you're not overexposed or underexposed, it's in the middle. So being thorough and checking all those things makes all the difference. Beginner or pro, we still make those mistakes, but getting it early on is going to help you out. That's my advice. You want to take better photos? I think those things will help you. I don't think those things are the sole ingredient. Like, you watch this video,
Peter, I freaking love you. You've taught me so much. I know that I'm not watching the last 43 seconds of his video. You should watch mine, because I'm going to be a hypocrite. Honestly, I found this incredibly helpful for me. The histogram is something that I think is my big takeaway from this. I didn't even know what that was. I literally thought it might be a heart rate monitor. I'm like, why do I need to look at that? So I definitely need to work on that. The other thing I mentioned, obviously the positioning's huge. All 4 of these tips were actually incredibly helpful. The last one though, I want to touch on really quick, that last one where he's like, don't just assume you've got it, be thorough. Not being thorough is the mistake. I struggle with that because a lot of it is for me. I usually am fairly good about getting my exposure triangle, even though I literally just said I suck at exposure. I usually do okay there. I don't do horribly, but I don't do great. I think where I struggle the biggest is actually my white balance. I have a locked white balance for when I'm live streaming with this camera, and I have a tendency to forget that it's locked instead of in auto, or instead of setting the white balance to what's going on around me. I literally forget white balance. Be thorough. I need to make like a checklist or something before I actually pull it, push the button down, pull the trigger, so to speak, on the shot. What have I checked on all these things prior to shooting? And I'm telling you, I've done that for one photo shoot that was really fun. It was impulse. We're gonna say impulse. And there was just this freedom rally going on, a bunch of Trump supporters, and regardless of what political side you're on, I'm not trying to say I was picking sides. It was just something cool to take photos of. And I remember going, okay, shutter speed here, ISO check. I had it on auto ISO. Goodness, that's hard to say. Maximum 1600, so it didn't like get super grainy. It was broad daylight though, so I had plenty of good lighting. Some of those photos turned out really good because of it. But I also remembered to set my white balance to the weather of that day, which was completely clear. So it really, the photos turned out so well. It was way easier to edit them. I really wish I knew about the histogram though, because several of them were over or underexposed, regardless of the fact that I felt like I had that nailed. I do hope you found this video helpful. I know that I definitely found this video helpful of Peter McKinnon. If you have not checked out Peter McKinnon yet, make sure you do that. I would be shocked if you have seen my video now and not ever heard of Peter McKinnon. That'd be mind blown. Dude's got 5 million subscribers. Anyhow, bless the like button if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next one. I can't just sign off like that. This is Bearden for Hope, signing off. I'll see you guys later.